Hi, I'm Jodie Carriss. I'm a therapist. I'm also an executive coach, and I'm the founder of Self Space and also the author of How to Grow Through What You Go Through. Mental health conditions can be hereditary, some of them are clinical, but most often what's happening is we're repeating learnt behaviour from our caregivers. So if we lived in a household where there were undiagnosed mental health conditions or even diagnosed ones, the way that we relate to the world and others will have been learnt in that environment. So if you grew up in a space where there were continual bouts of depression or manic behaviour, or parents or caregivers were more withdrawn, these are the behaviours that you will bring into your everyday life when you face challenges. And we have to work really hard in order to reshape and change those habits for the better. And this is where consciousness is so important to the way you live. Mental health conditions can be hereditary. Most often they're learnt behaviour. So if we grew up in a family where there was undiagnosed mental health conditions, you might have experienced your caregivers having long bouts of depression or being withdrawn. This is the behaviour we learn so that when we face stress or triggers in our life, which we will, we'll respond to that learnt behaviour. Our mental health will affect our daily lives in lots of ways, just like our physical health. If we are struggling with our mental health and our emotions, we might find that we're more readily overwhelmed, stressed. We might notice that we become anxious, we have low mood. We might find that we are not able to carry out daily tasks that we found easy before. We might find work a struggle, our children difficult. All of the things that contribute to us feeling more buoyant become challenging when we're struggling with our mental health. Your mental health can affect your everyday life in loads of different ways. So if you're struggling with how you're feeling, you might notice that it's really difficult to relate to people, that you feel more stressed more often. You might notice that your sleeping and eating habits change, not for the better most often. You might notice that you are not able to carry out everyday tasks as easily. Perhaps you're struggling at work. All areas of your life will be affected if you are struggling with your mental health. And the way to really help yourself is to think about the everyday routines, think about how you look after yourself, think about the way that you are connecting with others and sharing how you're doing. So mental health affects our relationships in lots of different ways, and it starts with our relationship to ourselves. So if we are feeling disconnected from ourselves, we're not able to tune into our feelings, this can be projected into all of our relationships. And you might find that you feel more angry, jealous, perhaps you feel frustrated. We tend to adopt a mask, which means that we show the world that everything's okay, when really underneath we might be really struggling. And what this does is can compound a sense of loneliness. And when we feel lonely and disconnected with nobody able to see how we're really doing, this can perpetuate our sense of poor mental health. Our mental health can affect our relationships in loads of different ways. If we're struggling, we might notice that we are much more frustrated with people, that we find it difficult to relate. We might notice that we locate really difficult feelings like jealousy or anger more readily, which makes it almost impossible to see the other person for who they are. It's only what we're feeling. We can also feel deeply sensitive, and this means that we can withdraw from relationships. And when we are struggling with how we're feeling, we can notice that we're super disconnected from people we might have felt connected to before, and we put on a mask showing that everything is okay or that we're doing well. We don't want the world to see that actually we are finding things really hard. And you'll notice that the minute you do share even just a little snippet of what's really going on for you, you can feel so much less lonely. The lack of sleep can impact our mental health in lots of different ways. When we go to sleep in our unconsciousness, this is where we balance out. This is where we rest, where we restore, and it directly impacts our consciousness, so our waking lives. And you'll notice that if you haven't had enough sleep, you might feel that you're more irritable. You might feel that work is difficult or almost impossible. You might notice that you're not able to keep keep other routines in your day, like exercising or eating well, because you haven't been sleeping properly. And this idea around self-love and the care we give ourselves is so important around sleep. The routine that you create for yourself in order to get to sleep, how you nourish yourself, your body, your mind, and thank yourself for the day that you've just had is so important. In our sleep, this is where our dreams speak to us. This is where our psyche balances out. It's such an important time for your body and your soul. I'm a massive advocate for sleep routines and how you take care of yourself when you go to bed. It's difficult to say if mental health conditions are actually increasing, or is it because we're talking about things more, which I think is a really good thing. I think if we can find ourselves in other people's stories, if we're more able to share, this is going to promote really positive cultural change in that space. I think that what we have become really good at, not only just talking about things more easily, but there are so many more everyday things that you can do now to take care of your mental health. So for example, the way you look after your skin, how much water you drink, the way that you speak to yourself and your body, and those small things every day, holding yourself to routines. These are the things that are going to keep you buoyant when the world throws significant challenges at you, which it will, and it does.